I am Tyron here with another episode of Weapon Locker and the Budget Weapon series, where I look at the lower costing weapons in the game to see if their quality exceeds their cost. For this video I decided to complete the set of tier 1 priced LMGs with the Vanu Sovereignties offering the Pulsar LSW. So onto the cost. This weapon will be setting you back a low 100 certs or 250 SC, making it very easy to pick up for the cert price if you are not a paying member. Now that the cost is out of the way, let's get started on this weapon's statistics. This weapon's fire rate comes at a very nice 698 rounds per minute, meaning it can handle close ranges fairly good. This rate of fire makes it the second fastest LMG available to the Vanu, only topped by the default Orion and equalled by the SVA-88. In terms of damage output, this gun comes in at 143 damage per bullet within 10 meters and 125 damage up to 65 meters. This damage, coupled with the fire rate, makes it easy to drop enemies quickly, with only the Orion with its higher fire rate having an easier time, but with trades off I'll get to later. The 143 damage per bullet is the standard for Vanu weapons, bar from the slower firing weapons that clock at 160 damage per bullet, these being the Flare and the Ursa. The slower firing rate being their trade-off for their high damage, and also meaning accuracy is more important. The muzzle velocity of a Pulsar LSW is a respectable 620 meters per second, meaning that longer range engagements are still viable with this gun, though its bullet spread does mean there are better alternatives on offer. The fire rate of 620 meters per second falls in the middle of the LMGs on offer to the Vanu, the lowest being the Flare at 600 meters per second, the highest being a dead tie between the Ursa and the common pool NS15M at 640 meters per second. This difference of 20 meters per second going back to a Pulsar is noticeable, but not to the degree where it causes any real problems. There isn't too much to say about the reload speed of this gun. It clocks at 4 seconds for a dry magazine and 3.2 when there's still a round in the mag. Apart from that, it falls somewhat in the middle of the Vanu LMGs. The reload speed isn't of any real concern because of a Pulsar's good clip size of 75 rounds, with 225 rounds in reserve. Again, this is somewhat in the middle ground for the Vanu, with the only gun being higher being the VX-29 Polaris at 100 rounds, and the two lower being the NS15M at 55 and the Orion at 50. This is the trade-off mentioned earlier, as the extra 25 rounds on offer to the Pulsar over the Orion make a huge difference when in the longer firefights. The clip size of a Pulsar, coupled with its fire rate, is one of its biggest advantages, as it means it can send a lot of, well, I wouldn't say lead, but in this case I suppose plasma, downrange, without needing to reload too often, making it follow the Terran Republic's philosophy of pay and spray to some degree. When it comes to this gun's hipfire, I would call it average, within 5 meters, but after that it starts to struggle, meaning I would recommend to take the time to aim down sights to be more effective. Unless you're using a laser sight, as this tightens up the spread, extending the hipfire's usable range out to 10 meters or so. As a result, rather than calling the hipfire of this gun an advantage or a disadvantage, I'd call it neutral, as it is usable but not the best. But its fire rate counters this to some degree, as it means that it's still a viable option in close range, as because of a fire rate you have a lot of chances to actually land hits on the target. On the other hand, one of a Pulsar LSW's main advantages is its recoil, as this recoil is fairly easy to control. This is, however, after the first shot, as it has a fairly high first shot multiplier of 2.75. After this, the gun settles and feels very good to use. It pulls slightly to the right and vertically, as with any weapon under sustained fire, but is not to the degree where it is uncontrollable. In fact, I would go as far to say its recoil is easily managed, even more so with a forward grip attached. So once you learn to adjust for a first shot multiplier, this gun recoils make it a pleasure to use. Moving on to the attachments of this weapon, I would recommend 2 loadouts, one for close quarters and one standard loadout for outside of close quarters. Starting with the close quarters, For the sight I personally use and would recommend the 2x reflex at a cost of 30 certs, simply because if you do need to aim down sights, the magnification is there. The 1x reflex and night vision scopes are also viable options. The downside of the night vision is that in the time it now takes to activate, but it is still useful for identifying targets, even more so when the sun's down. For the barrel attachment, I would go with a suppressor at a cost of 100 certs, simply as it makes it harder for targets to identify your location, which is a godsend when in close range combat. And finally, for a rail, there is only one real choice. This is the laser sight at a cost of 100 certs, as it tightens up the crosshair, making it easier to use in close range without having to aim down sights, and it also extends the usable range of the weapons when using it as a hipfire only weapon. For the second loadout, I stick with a 2x reflex sight. This is because it keeps the weapon versatile, as the magnification is good for medium range engagements, but it is not overpowering when drawn into close quarters. However, this sight does start to struggle outside 40 meters or so. When fighting at night using this loadout, I use the flash suppressor for my barrel attachment at a cost of 100 certs. This is because it makes it easy for me to keep my target in my sights by reducing the flash of the weapon. I only recommend using this at night as it is irrelevant during the day, and it does reduce full auto accuracy slightly. And finally, the obvious choice for the rail is a forward grip at a cost of 100 certs. This improves the already fairly good recoil of this gun and makes it easy to manage, and as a result it means you can land more bullets on target. With these additions, it brings the cost of a weapon for each loadout to 330 if bought only with certs, or 250 SC and 230 certs if bought with SC. Personally, here I would recommend buying with certs because of the low cost of the weapon in the first place. So in conclusion, this weapon's stats and traits lead towards its biggest strength. This strength is versatility, even more so when using two separate weapon loadouts. The Pulsar LSW is good but not the best in most scenarios, meaning that even though you may not always have the best weapon for the situation, you can still hold your own in a one-on-one fight. This versatility makes the weapon a good choice for most combat scenarios, as when combat changes from close to medium or vice versa, you still have a competitive weapon platform. So, would I recommend this weapon? The answer is yes. I believe it will be a good addition to new and experienced players' arsenals alike. This has been Iron Tyrant, thanks for watching.